Now, I have a metaphysical question to ask, and that is, how do we know there is such a thing as non-duality? And I ask this question not to refute the existence of non-duality, but because, as far as I can see, the term is used very loosely and far too often. It's kind of used as a blanket term in all circumstances. So if we're going to ask this question, how do we know there is such a thing as non-duality, then first, we have to identify what we mean by the term non-duality. Now, it wouldn't be correct to say that this is merely a spiritual consideration. In fact, we could say that non-duality represents these early phases of the Big Bang when time no longer has any meaning. It's a kind of hyper-energetic radiation that is a one-dimensional object. So I'm not going to get into what it means in physics here, because, quite frankly, we're going to have difficulty understanding what that's all about. So first, let's look at how Hindu yoga explains this term non-duality. We know that there is dual yoga and non-dual yoga. And in the dual presentation, then there is something called the Atman. And the Atman is the soul of the individual. It's permanent, unchanging, and pure. And then there's the soul of God, and that is Brahman. And that is also permanent, unchanging, and pure. And so, the purpose of yogic practice is to reunite the Atman with the Brahman, and this is seen to be the original state. That's what we're aiming for. And so, what is the non-dual presentation? Well, the non-dual presentation is that, since beginningless time, the Brahman and the Atman have never been separate. In fact, there is only the Brahman. The Brahman is singular and pure, and is everything. Within the Buddhist tenet, this type of non-duality is in fact duality. And that's because what is described to be non-duality in Buddhist philosophy is that which is free of the 8 elaborations. And so what are these 8 elaborations? The 8 elaborations are arising, ceasing, being singular or plural, coming and going, being same or different. And so we can see that this state of singularity of the Brahman is actually a dualistic state. And why is that? The notion of singularity arises only independence of plurality, and likewise sameness and difference. Realistically, the Hindu non-dual practice is actually a practice of devotion. It's non-dual devotion. The guru tells their student that everything is non-dual. From beginningless time, you were never separate from the Brahman, and so you and God are one. But again, this is a devotional practice. It is non-dual devotion. And that is because the student does not realize this state of non-duality. They merely give rise to faith that it is true. By absorbing oneself in this faith in non-duality, then one reaches a state of bliss or rapture. One-pointed contemplation on the love of Jesus is very similar to this non-dual devotion practice. The realization of non-duality means for that individual there is no dualistic perception. And we can see quite clearly that we have dualistic perception. There isn't a single person teaching non-duality on YouTube these days who has realized actual non-duality. And so what are we talking about when we say non-duality or non-dual awakening in the Buddhist tradition? Well, this is synonymous with the ultimate awakening mind or ultimate bodhicitta. It's also synonymous with Mahamudra and Dzogchen. This is the ultimate object and the ultimate goal of realization of the Buddhist scriptures. That doesn't really leave us with any idea of what we're talking about. It's no better than saying non-dual awakening. In fact, what we do is we hear something like, the nature of phenomena is bliss emptiness, and then we sit on our meditation cushion and we fabricate an object that accommodates our notion of what on earth could possibly be this thing called bliss emptiness. If we say bliss emptiness, then people will try to fabricate a kind of blissful feeling. If we say clarity emptiness, people will try to fabricate some kind of light in their mind, some kind of visualization of a bright light. And that's because we don't have anything to refer to when it comes to non-dual awakening. Because a state of non-duality is a state that is devoid of percept and perceiver. And for us, there is percept and perceiver. For example, I could ask you, are you able to hold an apple in your hand? And of course, we do this kind of thing every day. We interact with objects, we speak to people, we use language. These are all processes involving dualism. As it is said, whatever is embraced by the 8 elaborations is dual, and that which is devoid of the 8 elaborations is non-dual. So we can't directly access this. This is what it's taught in all the scriptures. We can't actually access the ultimate. We have to work with concepts, with the conventional, with relative first. and by developing our understanding through the relative, eventually we come to a point of realizing the ultimate. But all hope is not lost. We might think, well, this is incredibly difficult. I am not even able to conceive what something like non-duality is. So what hope have I got? Well, there is hope, because you could be introduced into an understanding of meditation that gives you insight into what is meant by non-duality. Duality is taught to be an illusion, and the true state is a non-dual state. And it is also something that we experience but we don't recognize. To give an analogy, if you were a pauper, but your house was built on top of a gold mine, now you don't know the gold mine is there. And so what you need is you need somebody to tell you that there is a gold mine under your house. So you're suffering greatly, you're very poor, and then somebody comes along and says, look chap, don't be upset. Underneath your house is a gold mine. Now, just knowing that there is a gold mine under your house doesn't make you rich. So somebody coming along and saying, don't worry chap, you're fine. You've got a gold mine under your house, but you don't need to dig it up. You're just fine as you are. Won't help you, right? You need to dig it up. Technically you are rich, but you actually have to put in the effort to retrieve the gold before it can benefit you. It's not like the gold is just lying around everywhere. The present moment of awareness is awakening, so you don't need to do anything. It's like gold just lying around everywhere. You can just pick it up. But it's not like that. It's something that you have to acquire through effort. And so how do you acquire this through effort? Well, it's acquired by breaking down your ordinary conceptual fallacies, your misconceptions about reality. Now, one could ask at this point, how am I misconceiving reality? We interact with others. We interact with objects. We hold objects in our hands. Now, in what way is that mistaken? It seems to be a very valid and real experience. Concepts are the basis of our delusion and misunderstanding. So what you need is you need to recognize that you have these conceptual fallacies, that there is actually this gold mine, that we possess this wealth. And to do that, we have to use something that we have at hand. So in this type of meditation, then outer objects are not considered to be that important. In fact, they're a little bit difficult for us to work with. The problem is that we cling very strongly to these outer objects as being something real. And so we tend to look at the appearances of mind, thoughts and concepts and feelings. Now, it's not to say that this calm abiding meditation, or shine, is not important. It's very important. We use these outer objects to bring stability to the mind and increase mental acuity. And this is very important, because without this mental stability, we are not able to engage in the study of mind. Now, I've been struggling to find a way to give you a basic understanding of what this kind of practice involves, this investigation of mind. But there's a problem here, because it is not appropriate to teach these things publicly, and especially on the internet. This is something that happens one-to-one between a teacher and a student, and usually in a retreat situation. And so I'm not teaching you mind instructions. I'm just trying to give you an example, to give you an idea of what you're looking for, what you need to study. You need to find a teacher who has these instructions, and then you need to engage in this study. So at this point then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the teachings that I've heard on meditation that appear in YouTube and that are very common these days. So there's this one teacher, and he says, I'm going to give you some meditation instruction now. Close your eyes. Now, I have to say that in Tibetan tradition, we don't close our eyes, we keep them open, and there's a reason for that. Maybe you should look into this. Try meditating with your eyes closed and try meditating with your eyes open and see what the difference is. So anyway, he says, close your eyes. And then you'll see some movement in the darkness. And there'll be chatter in the background, but you just ignore that. Okay, so now he's made a few statements. First, that there is movement in the darkness. And the second statement was that there is chatter in the back of the mind. Presumably there is chatter in the back of the mind. If a student were to make this kind of statement to an authentic meditation teacher, for example, oh, today I can't meditate. There's a lot of chatter in the background of my mind. And so an authentic teacher will say, oh, is there a background to your mind? So does that mean there's a foreground? Is there a right side and a left side? I want you to go sit on your cushion and tell me how many sides there are to your mind. Now, of course, when you sit down on your cushion, you're not going to find different sides to your mind, are you? It's ridiculous. And that's the whole point. This is a conceptual fallacy. We say these sort of things, but we've not really thought about what they mean. So we make these assumptions about mind and thoughts, And then we practice on our meditation cushion for year after year, and we wonder why we don't get any results. This is exactly why we don't get any results. Because we're meditating on a fallacy. We fabricated an idea of something that doesn't exist. But you have to check this out yourself. So this is your homework. Next time you meditate, you sit down and close your eyes and see if you can find out how many sides your mind has. Does it have a top, a bottom, a back, a front, a right, and a left? And if you do that, then it will give you a kind of basic idea of what is involved in finding the mind, or coming to understand the nature of phenomena. Coming to understand the nature of phenomena, which is this non-dual awakening, is the process of undermining one's conceptual fallacies, getting rid of our mistaken ideas about reality. Once you've removed all those mistaken ideas, what you are left with is this thing that they call clarity emptiness or bliss emptiness. But if you just go looking for bliss emptiness, you're just going to fabricate some kind of blissful feeling. And if you go looking for clarity emptiness, you're going to be looking for some kind of light shining in your mind. And this is mistaken. You're not asked to fabricate these things. What you're asked to do is to find out just how things are, just as it is. And it doesn't matter how many times somebody tells you everything is non-dual, there is no thought. Then for you, you have to look into it personally. You have to come to some visceral, personal understanding of the true nature of your own mind, not my mind, not the way that I fabricate things, but the way you fabricate things. And if you do that, then you will come that much closer to understanding what is meant by non-dual awakening. Thank you very much, and see you next time.